Welcome to this webinar on Talent Review 2.0 hosted by Career Coach. For those of you who do not know Career Coach is a spin-off of the University of Antwerp, and we are dedicated to developing tools which help individuals and organizations to adapt to contemporary careers. Now, what are my promises for today? When the idea of a webinar came to my mind first, I felt that I had some interesting thoughts to share on Talent Review based on the experiences I had with our tool Career Fitness Profiler. And I hope that by the end of this webinar, you will understand how the different mental models that we hold concerning careers have an impact on the Talent Review meeting. I also hope that you can see how these new career models also hold implications for employees, managers, and HR professionals when it comes to dealing with their careers. For those of you who have read my blogs leading up to this webinar, you have found that I put quite some emphasis on the need for evidence-based data in the Talent Review meeting. I've also introduced the individual's perspective into the Talent Review, and I hope that the interesting metrics that we have developed within Career Coach will also be inspiring for you. I also hope that these metrics that I will present in this webinar will be more tangible when we apply them to the cases of Steven and Carola. And of course, by the end of this webinar, I have an offering especially for you, attendees of this webinar. Maybe it's interesting to say something about myself first. I started to work in the banking sector in Dexia, where I've worked for 12 years, and looking back on the different projects that I've done, I can see that careers have always been of a particular interest to me. When I changed to Truvo, I was there in the role of talent manager, and after that I made the change to Antwerp Management School. And in terms of my own career, I think that was a very important move, because I see my own career as the period before Antwerp Management School and the period that came after that. This is where I met Jesse Segers and Wouter van Bokhaven, who introduced me to these new ways of looking at careers. Together with Wouter, I founded Career Coach in 2014. And so, somehow it's safe to say that everything that I do today has been inspired by Antwerp Management School. But I am not here alone today. I also invited Ingrid de Bakker. As you can see, we have a shared past at Dexia. This is also where we met. She has taken on different HR roles in Adecco and in bpost. And last year, she started her own company with a focus on talent and succession consultancy. Let's look at the Talent Review meeting. I think it's safe to say that a task like discussing the very people who will be the future of your company is bound to bring about some tensions. There just are a lot of different perspectives around the table, and in some cases a lot can be at stake. So I think it's interesting to look at the type of tensions that exist in a team meeting. Some of them will be quite familiar to you, but I also think that these new models have an impact on the type of dynamics that can be part of those discussions. I think this one you are all familiar with. I'm sure that you are aware of the difficulty of dealing with subjectivity. I wonder how many times you've had the feeling that some of the sometimes lengthy and passionate discussions you've had during the Talent Review meeting in the end had little added value because of the subjectivity and the dynamics in the group. So I guess the need here for evidence-based data is evident. Also this one, when you look at the quality of some of the decisions that are taken during the Talent Review, it's because, of course, this subjectivity that you can ask the question, whose interest was really served? That of the manager, that of the company, that of the employee? Was the decision short-term, long-term? Again, introducing evidence-based data might make it possible to improve the quality of your decisions. And this one, it's also no secret that a candidate who is well-liked and well-known is served better in the Talent Review as opposed to the lesser-known candidate who might also be a great professional. And how about these biases? They always enter the stage whenever we have to form an opinion about anyone. As if these tensions are not quite a challenge already to manage in the talent review meeting, I think it's even getting more complex, and that we have to add another difficulty to the equation. The world has become so VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, that careers have become dynamic and uncertain in themselves. You cannot manage them anymore. I think if you can facilitate the careers within your organization today, I think you're already doing a very good job. And people with potential understand this. So they are aware that they have to take their career in their own hands. So people are put into a position where they are forced to think about their careers more. And the big question has become, what makes me happy in my career? And so our way of looking at what is success has changed over the years. Nowadays, we are reflecting about subjective career success and what makes me happy, rather than only about objective career success, which was a dominating view in the 80s, for example. In those days, success was about climbing the hierarchical ladder, holding a managerial position, working for the big corporate, etc. Now let's see what science has to say about these changing career models. This here is a traditional career. And as you can see, at the bottom you have age, and on the vertical X we have performance. You make a choice in the beginning of your career. One important choice, what kind of company or what is the company I'm going to work for, and in what department, what type of job do I take. And then you have to start developing yourself, so you reach a level of competency which is acceptable for the organization, and then you have to maintain that level of competency before you start the decline of your career. In some cases, frustration and decline starts a little bit sooner, and some people, the lucky few, do actually make that jump onto the managerial ladder, get a new challenge, and start a different aspect of their career. So the focus here is on objective career success. This more recent career model shows psychological success on the vertical X, which is of course linked to the subjective career success I talked about earlier. The career in itself now has become a different set of jumps that you can make within one organization or throughout different types of organizations. And whenever you make a jump, that is fueled by intrinsic motivation. Whenever you feel that within a certain job or role that you have, you've reached a level of mastery, it becomes interesting to make another step in your career. And so if we take this idea of jumps a little bit further, then you can come to the model of the career spiral, which is the model that we use within Career Coach. The red arrow in the center of the spiral represents your career values. When you make these little jumps within your career, you don't jump in any given direction. The career values that you have will be your internal compass and guide you. We have about 12 career values that we measure, and those are based on the research done by Shine in the 70s, and we've updated it with more recent research. And so these 12 values are things like personal growth, managerial ambition, entrepreneurial ambition, work-life balance, financial and psychological recognition. It can be about intellectual challenge and so on. So a whole number of more intrinsic and more extrinsic motivators. The career itself, as I said, is a series of jumps, and so you form this career spiral. And of course you can be spiraling very close to the red arrow, and this is the moment when you will experience a great feeling of subjective career success. If you spiral very far away from your career values, from your ideal career, you will probably have the sense that something is missing. And so what makes it so that people actually spiral close to the red arrow or stay far away from it? That are career attitudes. And career attitudes represent our ability to manage our own careers. And I will be spending quite some time at exploring what these career attitudes are during this webinar. The third element in the model that we hold at Career Coach is the energy-stress balance. If careers have become so unpredictable and dynamic and three-dimensional, as I've just explained, well, that means that change is always there. And if change is present, then that means I have to manage the stress that this change provokes. I have to stay in flow. And we will be spending some time looking at the model that is behind this energy-stress balance, which is the psychological capital discovered by Lutáns. So these three models are behind everything we do at Career Coach. And a lot of the scales that we have developed are based on those three models. Now, if I combine those in a specific way, I think we can come up with interesting metrics to take into a report for the talent review meeting. So up till now, what is the most important thing that I wanted to tell you? That new careers are about subjective career success, and that self-management is also quite an important element of the new career. Now, what are the implications of this new career model for all career actors? Employees, managers, and HR professionals. From the individual point of view, I think every person should ask him or herself this question: how can I take advantage of the opportunities in the best possible way? If there are no more scripts, if careers are so dynamic and unpredictable, as we just explained, then this creates opportunities. And people who do not ask themselves this question put themselves at risk of becoming obsolete. And those who do reflect upon this question might look for a career coach to help find answers. And I do hope that you as an organization find yourself part of that process. Otherwise, this talented individual might come up with answers that do not suit you at all. So stay part of the negotiation, because that is what careers have become. They have become subject to negotiation, and both parties have to be equipped to do this negotiation. Imagine that you, as an organization, want to negotiate with your employees, that you ask the question of what is your vision on your career, what would you like to achieve, what are your goals, etc. And that person would simply answer, well, my dear organization, I do not know. Why don't you make the decision for me? That would make it very awkward. The reverse is also true. What if you have talented individuals who want to enter in this negotiation with you, and you as an organization have to admit that all your practices are based upon the old ways of looking at careers, and that job crafting, for instance, is not possible? That would make it all also very difficult. Now, if we explore the negotiation a little bit more into detail, we can ask ourselves if this negotiation does not hold opposing interests. Because from the point of view of an organization, you try to do something with careers because you want to improve performance. For an individual, careers are very much about achieving your personal career drivers and goals. And this is virtually about having an interesting career that makes you happy. Also, continuity is important from an organizational point of view, but not at all from the point of view of the individual. Also, for the organization, this is a strategic subject, while for the individual is much more a psychological exercise. Organizations like to formalize the rules of the game for careers, while individuals do not rely so much on the formal structures that you put into place. They try to rely on themselves and their network, for example. So I think that the organizations that manage to integrate both of these perspectives will make a difference in terms of growth of the organization, in terms of employability, war for talent, well-being. All of that will depend on the degree in which you manage to integrate the organizational perspective and the individual perspective in terms of careers. Now, if we apply this to the talent review meeting, I think that in a lot of organizations, the emphasis is still very much on the left side column. I just Googled talent review, and these are some of the visuals that I found. As you can see, they all represent a rather lineal approach to the talent review meeting, with little or no attention to the individual's perspective. So one question that you could ask yourself if you look at your talent review process is, to what extent is the employee's outlook on the career integrated in your talent review process? In order to achieve this, you must first understand and acknowledge that both of these career models that I explained exist within your organization. If one person thinks that the world is flat and the other that the world is round, then that makes a discussion about travel quite difficult. But it's even more complex than that. Both models exist within every individual in your organization. And you will see, if you explore this a little bit, that we do cherry picking depending on the situation that we find ourselves in. Let's look at some examples. Think about this one individual that comes to HR and says, my manager does not allow me to take a certain course, and that is a training, and that is not a good situation because this is bad for my employability. And you, as an HR professional, might think, wow, this person really thinks the world is round. That's fantastic. I can work with this person. And so you try to open that person's mind for instance, mobility. Because if you are in a bad context where you are and you cannot change this manager in his way of thinking, maybe it would be a good idea for you to find another context to flourish in. And then the reaction of that particular employee might be, yeah, I'm not going to change the context because then I have to leave my colleagues, or I will not be able to work in the same city or building that I'm used to working in. I don't want to do that. That, of course, is falling back on the old way of looking at careers. But HR, of course, does the same thing. They might be communicating for everyone to hear, take your career in your own hands, and employees might react, yeah, and when we try to do this, it turns out that all the career practices are based on old career models, and it's not at all possible to manage your own career. Job crafting, for instance, is not possible. Or when I talk about mobility with my manager, he behaves like he's been a cheated husband because leaving a team is really not accepted. So, what does that mean? That every career actor has to adapt. And this is culture change for which dialogue will be needed. You have to explore with all your career actors together what are things that you do today that keep the old way of thinking still present, and what are already things that you do that actually help you to develop new ways of thinking about careers. But that both of those models are still present in your organization, that's something that I'm quite sure of. As I said earlier, I want to spend some time on career management attitudes. Why do I want to take out at least 10 minutes to explain what these career management attitudes are about? Because there is a strong link with potential, as you will see. So these career management attitudes are what can also be referred to as self-management in the career, and they make it possible for an individual to move towards the red arrow, which are the career values that we talked about earlier. And the more these career management attitudes are developed, the more the person will be able to experience subjective career success. Now I want you all to take out a piece of paper and a pen, And you're going to be drawing a little man. And this man has a head, a body, arms and legs. And I'm going to tell you 4 little stories. Now, if you feel that the story I'm telling you, that for instance is linked to the body, and you strongly disagree with this story in terms of, yeah, Leslie, that does not at all describe what kind of person that I am, then you draw the arrow like in the body, like in the first little man with the dotted lines. If you rather disagree with the story, you can draw a full line. If you rather agree, it's like the third little man. And if you fully agree with this story, then you can fill the body up completely. And then I'm going to give you the story for the head, the arms and the legs and so on. So here is my first story that relates to the body. In my career, it is so that whenever somebody shows me an opportunity, a new role, a new job, or a new project, and tells me that it is something that is completely fit for me, that it's the perfect job for me, I know right away if that is the case or not. And if I sense that it's not at all the case, I will reject this offering, even if there are consequences tied to it, because maybe my boss or my colleagues will not appreciate it if I don't take on a certain objective. So that is for the first story. Now we're going to explain the story for the head. In my professional life, it is so that I really understand what goes on within my team, within my department, within my organization. I can see what's happening with competitors. I can see how the trends in the larger context that I work in might have an influence on my career. That is for the head. The story for the arms is this one. There are no barriers in my career. Sooner or later, I get what I want out of my career. If there are barriers, they are only from a temporary nature, because I will do anything it takes to get over them, around them, across them, or whatever, but sooner or later, I get from my career what I want. And then we have the legs. Oh, please send me to another department. Send me to another organization. Send me to another country. I want to travel. I want to physically move in my career. So those were the 4 stories. So you have a little person drawn now. And let's look at what those body parts actually mean. The body is about values drivenness. So a person with a strong body, somebody who agreed strongly with the story that I told, is somebody who has a very strong career identity and knows what they are about in terms of their career. People with a weak body, or more like a ship at sea where the wind and the current will decide where the boat ends up. And so if you want to manage your career, it's quite important to have a strong body, because that's your career identity. That is this is what will guide you in your career. But it's not enough. You also need a little head to connect yourself with what goes on in the larger context. People with a strong head will see where opportunities are, and if they can link that to their body, they can see opportunities for them. For instance, if I work in an insurance company and I deal with car accidents, for instance, if I have a strong head, I can see how cars without drivers will certainly come into the market, how that will reduce human mistakes on the road, how that will have an impact on the number of accidents that will occur. And if that number of accidents decreases because of the automated drivers, then that will lead to less files on my desk, and maybe my job won't even exist in 10 years or so. People who understand that will also understand that they need to adapt. So the head is about adaptability. And also that is not enough, because you also need arms to pull the opportunities closer. People with strong arms are people who will be able to sell themselves, who do the market and sales of their own careers, who are not afraid to step up to people who can have a positive impact on their career. They will actively look for visibility, etc. And that is how they pull opportunities towards themselves. And finally, you have the physical mobility. People with strong legs tend to want to move. So they're not afraid of leaving a certain context if they feel that they do not fit there anymore. So people who have all four of these career management attitudes are perfectly able to manage their own careers. Now let's see, do some exercises and see if it becomes clear how the model really works. So imagine that you would meet somebody who only has legs and all the rest is underdeveloped. What would that mean in terms of career behavior? A person with only legs will probably be a tourist in his or her career. They will be along the road and they will be hitchhiking, and every car that stops they will get in, no matter where that car goes to. So does that mean that the person will always be unhappy in their career? That's not at all what I'm saying, but I do see a risk that sooner or later this person might ask him or herself, why am I doing all this? Where do I finally want to go? The second person has everything but no legs. And so what is the potential risk for this person? That even though he feels that he does not fit where he is for the moment, he's still afraid of moving. People without legs usually are afraid of moving. And that person can also be very happy as long as they are in a situation that fits them. The third person can be seen as a procrastinator. He knows who he is in terms of his career, sees opportunities, is willing also to move, but is not capable of pulling the opportunities towards him or herself. So they are kind of dependent on what the context offers them. Is that always a problem? Not necessarily. Many people without arms still have a very interesting career. But of course, if the context is not friendly towards you, does not tend to see you, then maybe developing arms is interesting. And the last person knows what he or she wants and does have the arms to knock on every door in order to achieve what it is they are looking for themselves. But the problem, of course, with this person is that you cannot connect with him or her. It will be very difficult to explain to this person that if his or her preferred role does not exist in your organization anymore because of restructuring, for instance, it will be very hard for this person to understand that. And on top of that, there are no legs, so this person will also not leave your company. And they can be quite a challenge, these types of people, if they come to see you at HR with career issues. Now, why did I spend so much time on explaining what this career model, what these career attitudes are about? Because the predictive validity of these career management attitudes is just very strong. First of all, we see that people with strong career management attitudes will experience more subjective career success. And their psychological capital is also higher. And what is a psychological capital? We'll be talking about that a little bit later, but this is in essence about resilience. This is about hope, optimism, and self-efficacy. People that have high levels of psychological capital, of course, are much more happy and are able to deal with change more. And this is, of course, where it becomes interesting when we look at talent review, because we also see that people with these strong career management attitudes also have more objective career success. So we tend to see people with strong career management attitudes as high potentials. So they end up in higher hierarchical positions, they get more promotions, they get more budget responsibility, and they have a higher number of subordinates. So strong link with what we see as potential. Also, they are recognized by others as leaders. Also a link with potential. We see that there are links with engagement. We see that people with strong career management attitudes are also more innovative, that their performance is higher, that they want to continue to learn, that they collaborate better, and that they help each other more. People with strong career management attitudes have a very clear identity, and when change occurs, they're also more adaptable, so they don't lose themselves within the changes, but they can adapt. And this is why they are better in dealing with insecurity. So whenever there is restructuring or other change, they are able to manage this insecurity much better. Also, they hold a strong social capital, so they have a strong network that is willing to willing to help them. And that, of course, is rather double, because when things get tough, they might also have a network outside of your organization, and that may encourage them to make a step outside of your organization. They are not afraid of making physical moves, so leaving your organization, especially when they are losing energy. And so from that perspective, it's very important to have a continuous dialogue with people with strong career management attitudes. So we can safely say that developing career management attitudes within your organization brings a ton of benefits, but of course also some challenges in terms of mobility. And finally, I want to say something about psychological capital. As I said, if careers are so volatile, then I need to be able to keep up my own levels of energy to cope with the change. What is psychological capital? That is hope, optimism, self-efficacy, and resilience. Now, if you look at the ideal scores to say that somebody is healthy, you don't want maximum scores on either of those. That's somebody with, on a 10 scale, a 10 on hope is a little bit unrealistic. Hope is about seeing light at the end of the tunnel and seeing the steps that you need to take to get there. If that is extremely high, that's kind of unrealistic. Optimism is an attribution factor. People with an extreme high score on optimism tend to say that if things go well, it's because they are so good at it, because they are structurally competent, and when things go wrong, that this is because of the environment. So also here, a maximum score is not ideal. Self-efficacy, if people have a 10 on self-efficacy, you can ask yourself if that person is being stretched enough. And people with a 10 on resilience, this is also a little bit strange because it seems like this person cannot be touched somehow. That whatever stress you put on them, it doesn't have any effect at all. That's kind of strange as well. So those are the three models that we talked about. It's values, career management attitudes, and psychological capital. Now, how can these metrics help you in a talent review? As I said, I think it's important to see how we can keep the talent review evidence-based and how we can introduce the individual's perspective. Now, based on these three models, we can make some metrics. And for those of you who already work with the Career Fitness Profiler for the individual feedbacks on career management with individuals, you already know about these scales. But I think they are also interesting for a manager to know about a person. So the Career Fitness Index is one number, much like how the BMI tells you something about the health of a person. The Career Fitness Index tells you something about the health of a career. Career focus is about the degree that people are able to say clearly what it is they want out of their career. If you see that people do not make any choices, either by saying every motivator is interesting to me, or none of the motivators are interesting to me, or everything is just in the middle. If you see that the emphasis is on extrinsic motivators and not on intrinsic, if you see that the values drivenness in the career management attitudes are not there at all, then that person will score low on career focus. So the most ideal situation is to have a person that from those 12 values picks out a couple of them and says, that is what I truly like, and these are values that are less important to me. So that person really expresses some color, so to speak, and is motivated more intrinsically than extrinsically, and also has a strong body in the career management attitudes, then that person will have a strong career focus, and that is to be preferred. Career power is much more about the career management attitudes, but also some of the career values that represent ambition, like the management ambition or the entrepreneurial ambition. And you could see this career power, if we stay with the metaphor of the sports, then the career power is a lot about muscles. The career energy is then more cardio, and this is the psychological capital, which is more of a state. People can have a lot of psychological capital in the beginning of the day, and when they hear over lunch that their boss, who they adore, is being fired or something like that, that might have immediately a negative impact on career energy. But it's not only psychological capital, the metric of career energy. There are also some values that give energy, like personal goal attainment. So this is the cardio of the career. So I think to see these elements about an individual in a talent review meeting is already interesting. The new scales that I would like to introduce are these: ready to move, risk of leaving, and risk of fallout. With ready to move, I mean that some individuals, from their point of view, may feel that they are getting bored a little and that they are really ready to make a new move. Where can you see that? In the self-efficacy part of the psychological capital. Risk of leaving, this is something that we can also predict. When you see that a person is losing energy, that there is some strain on the psychological capital, and we also see that the people have strong career management attitudes, we can predict that they will make a jump rather sooner than later, because people with strong career management attitudes do not stay in a context that doesn't suit them anymore. If they feel they're losing energy, they will make a move. So if the risk of leaving scores high, this really is a reason to have an individual meeting with that particular employee. Risk of fallout, when the psychological capital is very low, and you can also see that the person does not have any career management attitudes, that's also a reason to have a meeting, because that person will not move and the psychological capital will deteriorate further and further until we end up with a burnout. So to make it clear, these metrics do not exist yet. We still have to build the algorithms behind it, but we do have the scales that are important in building this algorithm. So if we can make a report where next to the previous metrics that I already showed on career power and focus, etc., and if these can be added, I think that will be an interesting addition to a report to be used in the talent review. Now, to introduce the individual perspective, I think it's interesting that managers know what really motivates an individual. As I said, we measure 12. You can have the top 5, for instance, of these motivators. And also there are, I think, about 60 pitfalls now in the system. And those are interesting to know as well, because they are a combination of high and low scores on values and career management attitudes. And they can help you to, in an individual meeting with the individual, challenge that person on certain choices they might or might not make, and how that can have an impact on their subjective career success. For instance, this person here scores very high on need to contribute, and also on entrepreneurial ambition. This is a person who wants to be an independent, and we can already see that this motivation of being an entrepreneur will be fed a lot by this need to contribute. This is not somebody who will try to get who wants to be an independent because they want to make a lot of money, for instance. This is about really contributing to the larger system. She does have one of the pitfalls here, the sustainability paradox. When does that appear? When we see a combination of this high entrepreneurial ambition with a high need for contribute, but also a very low score on financial recognition. So this person really puts herself in a situation where she might end up working for the greater benefit and forgetting to ask money for it. So that can be a pitfall for this particular person. Since we already established that there is a lot of links between the career management attitudes and potential, I thought it would also be interesting to take on the little human figure and have the type that is connected to it. In this case, this is a person with a head that is not very strong. This person does have a body, does have arms, does have legs, but the head is a little weaker. That means that this person is being typed as a go-getter with a percentage of fit of 75.28%, which means that she quite will recognize herself in the typology of a go-getter, as we describe it in our report. Since there is a link with potential, you can see here already that the agility that is linked to the head is a little bit less developed. So when you look at those particular metrics, I think they both objectify and also introduce the individual's perspective in the talent review meeting. Let's take a look at the 2 cases that I have selected for you. The first one is about Steven. He's 36 years old. He's got 8 years of experience within your company, and he started out in the company in a Young Potential program, which took him 3 years of internship. He's moved around once more before coming to the team in which he is now. He regularly asks to participate in high visible projects, and the manager wants to promote Steven in a leadership role, and does say that Steven seems to be all over the place sometimes and that this irritates colleagues. Now let's see what the metrics say about this, and if we can give some backup by what is explained here through the data. These are the motivators and the pitfalls for Steven. What we see immediately in the motivators is that the percentiles are rather in the middle of the scale, so 62, 60%. Those are not very extreme scores. So we might already suspect that the career focus of Steven might be on the lower side. Further, we see that reward and recognition is an extrinsic motivator rather. So focus on the psychological recognition, the tap on the shoulder, so to speak, and also the financial reward. Social drive is a factor that has 3 subcomponents. One of them is people orientation. People with a high score on people orientation are rather warm people who will like to have a warm interaction. It's also about liking or needing a team, working in a team, doing the right things with people in a team. And also it holds a sub-factor which says that the person likes the dynamics of a team, where certain people can push you to do even better because of the dynamic that exists in the team, a healthy competitive spirit maybe. Then we see work-life balance, we see management ambition, which is a desire to climb the hierarchical ladder. And we see personal growth, which has two sub-factors. One is a more intrinsic search for personal growth, where people look for things to learn for which they are intrinsically motivated. They're pulled towards that material. And on the other side, there's also the more instrumental way of learning, where you see that certain competences or skills have to be acquired because it will open doors for your career in the future. For instance, I was a clinical psychologist when I entered the banking sector in an HR position, and I soon understood, if I did not start to interest myself in what a bank is and how what the different banking products are, etc., that I would have a tough time presenting myself as a real business partner to the business, for instance. But yeah, it's clear that finance in itself never was a primary motivator for me, because otherwise I would have studied finance, of course. What do we see in the pitfalls for Stephen here? Quite a number of those motivators in his top 5, remember that we measured 12, are on the more extrinsic side, like the reward and recognition, the work-life balance, the management ambition, and also the high score on the sub-factor on the instrumental learning, which indicates that there are a lot of extrinsic motivators in his profile, which makes him somehow a little bit dependent on others, or the motivation is dependent of things that are outside of the control, and that might be a pitfall. The lack of a bit of purpose indicates that he is clinging to a work-life balance without really knowing why. And we will see that when we look at his little human figure later on, that the stomach or the body is not at all present, which indicates that he has really no internal compass to guide him. So it's almost like the work-life balance pops up here because he doesn't really know what else to pursue. And then the stargazing syndrome will pop up in the report when we see that there's a lot of emphasis on management ambition, and also not backed up by by more intrinsic values to feed that management or that ambition with. So the stargazing syndrome means that a person is simply looking up to climb the ladder, and also again without really knowing why. When we look at the other indicators for Stephen, we see that the career fitness index is at a 6. The career focus is low. It's what I already suspected when I saw the more lower scores on the percentiles in the values. The career power, however, is quite high, and he also has a lot of energy. We can see in the human figure that he has strong arms, strong legs, strong head, and that the body is a lot weaker. So we see that there's still a lot of career power, but it's of course the lack of the body here, which might be a problem for this person in the long run. And then when we also take into consideration the new metrics that I have proposed, ready to move, risk of leaving, and risk of fallout, who all are deduced from the career energy metric, there we can see that ready to move indicates that the self-confidence is at a very high level, and that person really feels that he's ready to move. So he's already in a state of mind where he wants to have a new challenge, wants to do new things. The risk of leaving is not so high yet, but we do see, if we wait too long for having a conversation with Stephen, that the risk of leaving might also become even higher. But he's not going to go in a burnout or in a bore-out at all, because he still has a lot of energy. So I guess the problem here with Stephen, if we're gonna consider putting him in a management position, The question is a little bit, how can you manage other people if you cannot manage yourself? The lack of values in the body is quite a negative indicator for promoting him in a leadership role. I guess if I would give advice based on these data, I would suggest that Stephen first takes some time to reflect a little bit more on what it really is that he wants, so that that career focus and that body can become a little bit more that it wins force, so to speak, on those elements. And I can see how he might irritate other people, because he's got, of course, very strong arms and he sees all the opportunities, but somehow he doesn't know where he's going himself. That makes him a mercenary, and that's, of course, what these colleagues react to. That kind of behavior can be quite irritating to other people. But it's sure to say that Stephen has a lot of potential in him. It's just a little bit too early, I think. We should help him to develop his own career vision more, see if we can find intrinsic motivators that can fuel this ambition that he has, which is clearly there, right? in the management ambition, etc. We can really see some ambition. But as I said, I think it's a little bit too early to promote him right now. The second case is the case of Carola. She's 32 years old. She came in from another company 3 years ago. She's a high performer, seems to come up with innovative solutions all the time, and has recently inquired if an application for an MBA program would be possible budget-wise. The manager here says that he wants to prepare Carola for a future management position. He sees her as dynamic, someone with a very strong drive, and he says she's considered someone of value by her colleagues. And yeah, that's my argumentation to promote her into a management position. Now let's see what we can learn from the data of Carola. Well, first of all, we see in the motivators here that the career focus is a lot stronger than the one with Stephen. You see that the scores on the percentiles are a lot higher, and that she puts forward a lot of intrinsic motivators. Intellectual challenge means that she likes to get new puzzles on a regular basis, and that is compatible, I would say, with what the manager says. It's the intellectual challenge that usually holds also a part of creativity that allows you to come up with innovative solutions. She wants to personally grow. She likes her autonomy, and there's also a high score on self-directedness. Self-directedness is also a little bit the individualism in a career, in the sense that people that score high on this factor do not like it when other people try to meddle with their career. Their career is really theirs, and there is really no negotiation possible. And that it's different from people that score high on autonomy. People with a high score on autonomy will probably allow you to negotiate with them about the terms of this autonomy, while people with a high score on self-directedness will not negotiate with you. Their career choices are theirs, and they will not only decide if they jump, but they will also decide how high they jump. So they are the people that also decide what is hard work. What is the level of work that you can expect from me? And they will also not like it if you try to raise the bar or tell them in any way how to run their things. She does have a very high personal goal attainment as well. People with a high score on goal attainment are people that will take on certain KPIs that are given by them by an organization, but at the same time they also hold a list of goals that they want to achieve for themselves. So people with a high personal goal attainment have all the interest of making sure that the goals that they have to reach for the organization are in line with the goals that they want to reach for themselves, because if not, their heart will always pull them towards their own personal goals, and that becomes a stretch, that becomes very difficult. So here we solely see intrinsic motivators, but you can also sense that this is not going to be an easy woman to manage. What we see in the pitfalls is that yeah, she needs to pay attention to the wrong kind of challenge, which means that people with a very high score on intellectual challenge really need to analyze a future role or a new project to see if it really is intellectually challenging for them. Because any manager who needs to sell a new job or a new project or whatever to a possible candidate will try to say that it is a challenging thing. It's just something that everybody, so to speak, should like. And so we need to see if the challenge here is a real challenge or just a marketing issue. Then the lure of promotion means that Carola had a very low score on management ambition. So she's not at all motivated by climbing the hierarchical ladder or the status and the power that come with it. But of course, again, from a point of view of what we like socially, it's still appreciated in many organizations that a promotion, a hierarchical promotion, is a way of saying that we like the person, or that we think that the person is a viable asset for the organization. So people with a low score on management ambitions should make sure that they do not fall into the trap of the lure of promotion, and just by accepting a management position because it gives them more money or more status or more a higher position, etc., because it's not something that will make them happy. And then career isolation is a pitfall that comes up when we see lower scores on the personal drive elements, and basically says make sure that in managing your own career you do not get isolated because you do not take into consideration all the stakeholders that may have an impact on your career. When we look at the other scores for Carola, we see that her career fitness index is a lot higher. She's got an 8. Her career focus is very strong, as we saw. So she makes very clear choices in what she likes and what does not motivate her. So when we would look at her 12, the 12 motivators that we measured, we would see the high scores, the ones that I just showed you, with equally low scores on a number of other aspects that are not important for her at all. So she makes very clear choices in what she likes and what she doesn't like. She's got a lot of muscles. Her career power is very strong. As you can see, she's an explorer at 89% fit. So she really has all the career management attitudes that you need to manage your own career. But we also see that her energy is not low, but there is some pressure on that energy. So the question is, what is happening with her? Does she not feel intellectually challenged enough in her current role? Does she feel that people are meddling with her career? We just could look at all her intrinsic motivators and wonder if there's one in there that that she doesn't have for the moment, because that would mean that she would lose energy on that aspect of her job. So in my opinion, it's really necessary to speak with Carola as soon as possible, because she's losing energy and she's got all the career muscles that you need to make a move. Here is a real risk of leaving. And you can see that I put the risk of leaving on a 10 in this case. She's not so far that she will really fall out. It's not so that her energy levels are at a dangerously low level yet. But we can also assume that she's not gonna wait until that happens. She will have made a choice and she will have made a move before that happens. And in the ready to move, of course, because the ready to move also has a score that in this case I think is less relevant. It's more the risk of leaving that we need to take in consideration. So what is important for Carola here? If we look at her motivators, I think there are some negative indicators for putting her on a leadership role. She doesn't have the social drive in her. She doesn't have the management ambition. This is, in my opinion, more somebody who would benefit of being in a position where she does have impact on what happens in the organization, but where she can do so from a project role or a more expert role, in which, in my opinion, she would flourish a little bit more. And I think also if you would really take the time to talk to this person, she will tell you as much. So I'm not even convinced that she would accept a management role, being the explorer that she is. If she's a little bit conscious, and I think she is, she will understand that a management role might not necessarily make her happy. And also a discussion, of course, can be held on the MBA. What is the purpose of doing the MBA? Why does she want to do this? And is that in the interest of the organization if we do not put her on a management role, yes or no? So lots of material here to discuss, and I think the data make it clear what the topic of the conversation with Carola should be about. So I hope that with these two cases, it becomes a little bit more clear how these metrics can really serve a management team doing a talent review. So what is the offering, especially for you attendees of this webinar? We've talked a lot about metrics today, but of course in talent review meeting there's also a whole aspect in terms of process, which we have not discussed today. Ingrid de Bakker, whom I've introduced earlier in this webinar, is a real specialist in terms of the processes linked to talent review. And she has a training on the 25th of June, for which we can offer you a reduction of 15%. If you want to try out the metrics that I discussed, it can be interesting to take the second offering with 30% reduction. I will give you the 3 reports of the Talent Review Profiler with an in-depth debrief to HR that can be used as an input for the Talent Review meeting. If you want to give the employees themselves also some feedback, you can do this either by a basic report, which is free for you. I will send it to you and you can give it to the employees. Or if you also want an in-depth feedback face-to-face with these individuals, I can do that for you too at a price of 250 euros per person. Another offer that I like to make you is that I would love to find an organization who's willing to do a pilot with us, to do a larger exercise in terms of talent review and really build a report together. So entering in co-creation with Career Coach in building a talent review meeting report based on the models and the metrics that I've presented today. If you're interested in that, you can contact me either by email or by phone. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to talk to you soon.